Right, so good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's session, which is probably our last session for this bootcamp. Right, so today we're going to be talking about user testing and usability testing. Right, so some people might use both terminologies, like they might interchange it, but they are two different things, and we're going to look at both of them and how they help us validate our design. Right, so we have gone through all the process of finding solutions to our problems, ideating, and designing something on Figma. So we're at the stage in our design process where we want to ensure that what we're designing is validated, right? Users can use it. It's it's usable and it's solving the problems we want to solve. That's before we pitch it to the developers or give it to them to start coding. So that's the stage we currently are in, right? So now, user testing, like I've said, is the last stage of the design thinking process. It involves checking if your product solves the user problems. It simply focuses on the needs and expectations of your user. So, like I've said before about the design thinking process, it's not linear, right? So you do not always have to do user testing at the end of the design thinking of your process, right? You do not always have to do it after you have a design on Figma. You can test your information architecture. You can test your ideas that you ideated in your ideation stage. You can test your problem statements that you defined, right? So it's something you preferably done at every single stage of the design thinking process. You keep testing to ensure that your product that you're creating solves the user problems, right? So it's as simple as that. So from the user research methods we talked about in the empathy stage and in the define stage, we have actually touched a lot of user testing methods, right? So this class will just be about refreshing our memory on them and showing us better ways to test our products and all that. So that is for user testing, right? So user testing is simply checking if your product solves the user's problem, right? While usability testing involves testing how easy and intuitive it is to use your product. So while user testing is focusing on needs and expectations, right? Because remember, problem and solution, we're offering a solution. So user testing is testing that solution, testing that this solution actually solves that problem. While usability testing is testing the efficiency, clarity, and satisfaction. Like I've said before, it's one thing to provide a solution to a problem. It's another thing to ensure that that solution is usable, right? People know how to use it. It's just like buying something and buying something and it's not having a manual. So that is, I talked about this when I was talking about user flows and information architecture. When I cited Discord, right? So Discord is a very good application for teamwork, for team projects and all that, but it has a very steep learning curve, right? So it's a bit difficult to understand when you're using it for the first time. That's the difference between user testing and usability testing, right? So this code, user testing, it's past the user testing criteria. It's solving the needs, it's solving the expectations of the users, right? But when it comes to how easy and intuitive it is to use, that's where problems come in, right? That's where it now needs a manual. That's the difference between user testing and usability testing. Right? So why does user testing matter? It's straightforward. One, it reveals real user pain points. It reduces design assumptions. It saves time and money before launch. It improves user satisfaction and adoption. So user testing is actually another form of user research. We did a lot on research at the beginning phase of the design thinking process. So whatever benefit user research would give you, user testing also gives you that same benefit. That's why you see that the benefits are similar, right? Because it reveals our users' pain points. Again, it reduces design assumptions. So now you're not designing based on assumptions or based on your own interests and problems. You're designing based on your users' expectations, their needs, what they want. Also saves time and money before launch, right? Because at the depending on what stage of the design thinking process you're conducting your user testing on, You're wasting time and resources that would have been wasted. You're saving time and resources that would have been wasted if you went ahead with that project without testing it, right? So imagine you're done with your design, you've prototyped it and give it to the developer to start developing, right? So now developer is done with it. You've paid the developer and you're trying to test the product at this stage, right? And we find a huge flaw, a huge usability problem or user issue at some stage. Now you have to go back to your design and redesign it. You also have to pay that developer again, start coding it, right? So you can see that time is wasted, money is also wasted, resources are being wasted, right? So that's why user testing is crucial, it's important, right? Because no matter how much we think um our our, our solution is straightforward, is straight to the point, it's easy and it's usable, it's never we can never be sure until we have tested it with real users having that problem and we're certain that it's actually solving those problems. So remember, what we're working on is based off assumptions. That's why we had to do a lot of research and a lot of definition to ensure that we are solving the real problem, right? So even after doing all that, we still end up testing with the users, right? Okay, I got this information from you. I solved this problem from you. I'm giving you this solution now. Is it actually working? Right. So another thing is it helps to improve user satisfaction and adoption, right? So that one is straightforward. So what are the user testing methods? This class will be brief because something that we have discussed before. So we have interviews, right? This is just simply sitting your user one on one, face to face, and interviewing them, asking them it's usually it's qualitative, right? Because visa is in front of right in front of you. You can ask them questions. They give you open answers. They give you long paragraphs. They might just take permission from them. Okay, I want to record this interview. Is that all right with you? You say yes, then you just put on your recorder and they talk about how it has been using this application, how it has been using your product, right? So you share your product with them, you get their feedback on that end. So we also have user surveys. User surveys, like I told you, is mostly for getting quantitative data. It could be online using Google Form. We have worked with Google Form before. I have showed us how to use Google Form. So it could be with Google Forms where we get quantitative data, ask them questions, they give you their open-ended or closed-ended or closed open or closed-ended answers, right? So we also have A and B testing, which simply involves comparing versions. Comparing versions. So now you're done with your design. You're done with your design, and you have you have ended up with two different designs for the same thing, right? So now you're left with two designs. Instead of making the decision on your own, sometimes it's best to leave it for your users, right? So give a particular user two different variations, that's the A and the B. Let them test it. Let them tell you which one is easier for them to use, which one appeals to them the most, which one they find more delightful to use or more attractive, anything at all, which one is better, right? So another way of comparing different versions and getting more feedback from them, right? That's for user testing. Then we have usability testing, right? So now in usability, remember in usability testing, we are testing the the efficiency, the clarity, the intuitiveness of our application, right? We have things like task completion. Just like me giving you a task in Discord. I'm telling you, change your display name, change your display name, right? So that's a task I've given you as my participant. And I just simply look at you and I watch you move around the Discord and trying to change your display name. So the friction, the way you move around, probably you go to settings, you don't see it in settings, go to profile, you're just moving back and forth, right? So that friction, that the roadmap, I would look at how easy it is for you to complete tasks. I'll observe your struggles. I'll see what could have been done better. And so that's a method of conducting usability test. So we also have the think aloud protocol where users explain what they are doing while navigating the application. Right. We also have use remote testing where we use online tools like Maze, usabilitytesting.com, Lookback, and all that, right? So sometimes we might not have access to these users, like one-on-one users, for them for us to see them using and using the application we created face to face, right? So there are some online tools where we can access people like you, where you might have to pay them for their services though, right? But these are people that are willing to test your application for you. So and another thing about usability testing is that they're usually it's made up of just three components. Rather, I'll just say it is three components. You have the facilitator, that is you or whoever is conducting the usability test. You have the facilitator, you have the task, and you have the participant. So those are the three components of the usability test, right? So the participant is simply your target audience, the person you created the application for, the one that fits into the user persona that you have created previously, right? And you have the tasks, that's just different tasks, different things that they could do with your application that you want to watch them, you want to observe them do, right? And now you're also the facilitator of that usability test. So the tools available for user testing, right? We have the Figma prototype, simple Figma that we're all using. So you simply get your prototype link and you share it with somebody. The third person interacts with this application, move from here to here. I want to see how you're going to move around. I want to see your struggles. I want to see how easy it is for you to do some certain. So there is Maze, there's Lookback, there's Hotjar, there's Listener, there's Usability Hub, and there's usertesting.com. So these are different websites offering different services. You can check them out in our free time and see what they have to offer on that end, right? So also in usability testing methods, right? So there's something I did not touch here because we have done it previously. That's the Jacob Nelson usability heuristic, right? So this is I we talked about this previously. When you come into an application, a website, a mobile app on your phone, right? So there were 10 usability heuristics that we did. So you can go back to your previous classes or your previous slides, or if you still recall from what we talked about. So those are like what do you call it? A check mark, right? A checkbox that every application, every website should at least follow to ensure that this application is usable, right? So that's another user testing method we know about, right? So let's look at this usertesting.com. All right, so this is a platform where you can get users, right? Users that would test your work. So it's as simple as uploading your picture, your probably your prototype or your design from Figma into the application and running it and getting people that are going to test your products and to give you call your attention to some certain problems and probably or user usability issues that should be fixed, right? So that's that's for user testing. There's nothing much to it. In listener is all right. So this is listener, right? So in listener, you can be the tester and you can be the person um being tested, right? So you can be paid to test people's products and all that. So this is the application. You can just get familiar with it, log in and sign up, and right. Now that we have gone through all the stages of the design thinking process, right? So we have come, let's say we have come to the end of a cycle, a full cycle, right? We start with user research, searching our users, um getting the details from them. Then we talked about defining their problems, getting their problem statements, right? As I said, the problem statement is the main result or the main data we obtain at the define stage, right? Then we went into information architecture and ideation. We talked about user flows, user personas, structuring our application or our digital project, sketching the mid fidelity sketch and high fidelity sketches. Then we entered prototyping. That is where we actually started working on Figma, right? So we started from Google Docs, right? From documenting your data. Then we entered FigJam, where we started sketching our data to get a sense of what we are doing. Started sketching the user personas and the user flows, the information architecture. Then we entered Figma to start creating our low fidelity wireframe and our high fidelity wireframe and prototyping these together, right, to get a coherent application. And we also went into the details of prototyping where we talked about colors in separation. We talked about typography separately, talked about visual hierarchy, design principles, and all that to ensure that when you're working on Figma, when you're designing something on Figma, you're designing something that adheres to the strict rules of design, right? Then now we are currently at user testing. Let's say you have tested this idea, you have you have given it to the developer, you're done with your job, right? So let's say at this point you are now a well-rounded UI UX designer. You have done your first project. So now this is where we're going to start when we want to start building our portfolio, right? Because we have done all this, but how do we show it? How do we show the world that I have solved this problem? I have done this design, I have prototyped this design, I have tested it and it's working, right? So you want to have something to put in your portfolio. So that's where concept of case studies come in. So if you have already seen your task 7, you should have already seen the word and you should have already started making some research into what a case study looks like or what a case study means, right? So before we end this class, I'm just going to go briefly into what I'm expecting us to do, how a case study is meant to be, and what should be in a case study, right? It's not actually not something strange. From the very start of the bootcamp, I structured our learning in such a way that everything was aligned to show everything was structured the way a case study should be structured. Right? So I'm just going to share this. So simply a case study is simply a detailed account of a design project. That's a case study in UI UX design. It simply describes a designer's process to solve a user interface or user experience problem. It usually includes the project background, the problem you're solving, the solution you address, your profiling, the designer's role, and the steps you took. Right? So it's simply, how will I say it? It's simply that's a description of a design project. Right? So for most of us, for the first task that we had, for the second task rather, where we had to think of a problem in our society that we want to solve, right? So that's already a case study. So that's a case that you decided to study and embark on. I want to solve the problem of water scarcity in my area, right? I think someone talked about an application where you can access boreholes, right? You can just with your phone, just like a map. You know how we have Uber, so like an Uber for water and or waste for water supply rather. So something like that. That's already a case study now. So now there's for UI UX designers, we found a way to structure everything we have done, right? To structure everything we have done regarding a design project, and we call it a case study. So I'm just going to move us through what a case study is supposed to contain. Uh, I'm just going to go through this this UI UX designer's case study, right? So this is her website. So I can share this to us, right? Let me share it on the chat section. So you can access it on your computer. It's live. Right. So now start by an introduction. Right. So just an introduction. So South Faith is a Southeast Asia's fastest growing fintech platform that helps consumers save, while Faith Bees helps merchants grow their business. So she first started with an introduction of what the platform is about or what problem they are trying to solve. Then she talked about her role. I led the design, user testing, and development of this project from end to end. I collaborated with two product designers, right? So that's if you collaborated with people and the lead product manager throughout the entire project. So she talked about the problem she tries to solve. So this problem now is usually what you have synthesized when you get your problem statement at the defined stage. Right? So from her problem or from whatever research she did, she found out that the old landing page is outdated, that Faith does not have an official company page, the existing app download metrics could be improved. So these were the problems she discovered, right, that she wants to start working on. Her goal now is to communicate Faith's value proposition, drive apps downloads, drive merchants to Faith fees, drive job seekers to career stage. Then she also talked about the impact, right? And she also depicted it visually over here. Then we now entered ideation. So if you notice that everything being done now is following that same sequential design thinking process. It's not nothing here is strange. Nothing here is strange. We have all done this. If you are currently at stage 7, you have done everything here. So we start with an introduction, right? So this is simply where we talked about the problem we wanted to solve. That was your very first task. Identify a problem you want to solve. So that's the introduction. And the solution you are profiling, the digital product that you're trying to create, right? And all that. Then your role, what did you do? Are you the UI UX designer? Do you, what did you collaborate with people? So your role in this application. Then the problem, right? So this is problem was gotten from the define stage. Obviously, we know that the problem statement is derived from the design, the define stage. Then after all that, she talked about the ideation. Now we are at the ideation stage. She There's a picture of the sketch here, the design principles she used, right? So relevance in control, reliable and secure, convenience, and all that. Then the sketches, right? So this is her sketch. You can see it's nothing pretty. Like I told us in the ideation stage, we should feel free enough to just ideate, like sketch on paper. It's not meant to be pretty. It did not look pretty here at all, right? Right. And a kind of tip I would give everyone here is that when you include sketches in your case study, it gives it more of a human feel. It gives it more credibility. Most recruiters, when they're looking at case studies, right, because this is basically your portfolio. When they're looking at case studies and they see sketches, it's more they find it more impressive, right? So recruiters will tell you that include sketches in your ideation stage. The sketch you did, right? Take a picture of it and put this in there. I told everyone to just feel free, feel free. Think of whatever you want to think of, sketch it out, and take your time to refine it in the following stages, right? So she said this is how the early wireframe looks like, right? So this is just a sketch. Then she got the wireframe, right? So just as simple as this. So we can see the whole process. We started from the problem, then we saw the sketches, and we are seeing the low fidelity wireframe or the mid fidelity wireframe rather. Then now we are now seeing the high fidelity wireframe, right? So it's as simple as that. Then we now entered user testing. So if you can see the process, she's also following the 5 stages of the design thinking process. She might use different words, but it's still that same process that we tend to follow. So user testing, I conducted 5 user tests with people and all that, right? So she also included her survey results, right? So if at the beginning stage where we did research, you got some research data that you feel is valuable enough, like you think it's important for it to be included in your case study. Find a way to present it. You have Figma, so find a way to present and design it, right? And include it in your case study. So final designs, this is the before and this is the after, right? So this is the previous application and this is what she worked on to improve it, right? So that is that for this case study. So not all case studies would look like this, but most of them are structured like this. They tend to always look like this, right? So if you go to Behance, I shared different sites for design inspiration. If you go to this Behance and we type case study, we have already clicked on that. So we're going to see different case studies here. Right, so this is a case study someone created here, right? So the service, the tools used, the name of the project, the name of the application, the date, right? So 150 plus screens, 100 plus survey replies. So this is the team that worked on the case study. This is the project overview. This is similar to the introduction we saw previously, right? So this is the target audience. We are currently at the research stage here. So this is the target audience that we got, right? Now the problem statement from the define to the define stage again. So the solution statement, this is the solution that they ended up with, right? Added some visuals, talked about the business strategy, creative strategy, the design thinking process where they empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. Then they also did some competitive analysis. We talked about competitive analysis here, where they analyze different investors or different companies doing something similar to what they are creating, right? So they analyze what they have and what they do not have and how they can improve on the existing application. To talk about the pros and cons. Also did some SWOT analysis. So you can see that nothing here is strange, right? It's something that we have all done. We have done like from 3 months back till now. We have touched all this. So SWOT analysis, the strengths, the weakness, the opportunities, and the threats. Then the surveys. We did a survey, a Google Form survey, right? So these are the key insights and all that. Surveys, key insight, and the user interviews too. So depending on what type of research you did, whether you did a survey or you did a user user interview rather. So they got the insights, right? So if you remember, there's a task I gave. I said from the user research you did, what are the key insights? So it's nothing strange. We've all done it, right? We now have the affinity diagram. We create an affinity diagram, the persona, right? So this person is trying to now everything we have been doing, we have been looking at now are all parts of the define stage. Person is trying to define the make sense of the user research they did previously. So they got the affinity diagram, they got their competitive analysis, they now created a user persona, right? And they represented it as best as they could, where they put the goals, the bio, the quotes, the pain points, right? On that persona too. So like I said, either one or two goals, pain points, bio. Then they also created an empathy map. We have all done this. So says, thinks, does, and feels. Another empathy map, right? So the user journey too. Right? So user journey. You also have a storyboard, right? So this is another defined method that we can also look at, right? A storyboard. Also have the user stories. We also looked at this value proposition. So this is a very detailed case study, right? So this will tell you that case study can come in different forms. The one we just looked at previously was not as detailed as this. It's as simple as saying the problem that was solved, solution that was solved, the the data that was synthesized, right? Defining the data, ensuring that it's clear and precise, and then showing the solution that's the design, right? So this is a task flow. We're all familiar with this. This was done in FigJam, right? So it looks very familiar to us because it's the user flow that we're familiar with. Then we also have the information architecture. So this is not strange to anybody here. So we also have now the branding, you have the tone and voice. We talked about this when we're choosing colors. What is your branding? What is your brand's personality? Playful and fun, right? So this way they talked about the typography, right? The colors they used, the app icon as iconography, the logo that was used, probably social media posts and all that, right? So we also have the high fidelity wireframe. And so this one is then they also have the design system. Right, so this is something looking very complex, right? Very complex. But the best thing is the best rule to follow is to ensure that you are including everything that you did using the design system, design thinking process flow, right? Just Start by talking about the problem that you solve, the solution that you're offering, then whatever insight you got from your research, that's your defined stage, right? Then you talk about your ideation. You probably include a sketch of what you did, the your prototype, your high fidelity wireframe that you designed. You probably talk about whatever testing you did, right? That's simply how a case study looks. Right? So it's as simple as that. You can also go to there are different places you can get case studies. You can go to Dribble. You to see a lot of case studies over here, even in Pinterest, right? So if you're looking for design inspiration for a case study, you can go. You can. There's a lot of design inspiration. You can get a lot from anywhere. But the main problem is to know what you are including in your case study, right? To know what you're including, then the design is just the last thing to do, right? So get your. Let's look at this, right? This is the problem statement, the possible solution, project duration, tools used, design process, and all that. So just go through different case studies, see how it's done, right? So it's nothing that we have not touched before. So it's nothing to be scared about, right? So go through it, design yours, talk about yours and how you came up with your colors, why you chose your font. So that's why I always ask the rationale, why are you doing this, right? Because it's nothing is by choice in UI UX design. It's not graphic design, right? We are doing everything with a purpose in mind because that's what we are being paid to do, right? So that is it for the case study. So any questions? Do we have any questions or any confusion, right? Any questions? Even in your Figma community, you can get case studies there. So even if you go to Figma community, you can you can find some case studies in there. Right? Let me this is Figma community. So let's see. Case study, right? So there's a lot of information out there for everybody, right? So it's nothing to so there are even templates here, right? There's a template here. So it's just left for you. There are different ways to depict your case study. Sometimes you can decide to post when you're done with designing the case study. You can post it on Behance. You can post it on Dribble. You can decide to even create your own website, right? Because this is your portfolio. Something it's as simple as portfolio is like similar to CV now. You know, when you are applying for a job and someone's asking you, what have you designed before, right? Simply send them Behance link, send them your website link, right? So this is something I've done before. So let's look at what it's here, right? So opening Figma. Let me open this. So sorry. Okay, so while that is loading, let me see if I can open something. I want us to just write something else. Right, so you can decide to use a template, right? But the best is to um design it yourself, right? Because you want this is something that represents you as a designer. You're trying to show the world that this is what you did and what you designed, right? So it's best that it's representing you in every way possible. Right, so this is what this person case studies use. So it's as simple as we know how to create a case study. or to design a case study rather, right? So after you've gotten all your data like project overview, the problem statement, so it usually starts with a kind of mini hero section. The picture is still loading. And the picture is loading, but you have the project overview, the problem statement, your goals, the user problem, the possible solutions, right? Understanding the problem, your primary research, your secondary research, your user personas and pain points. So yeah, there's a lot. So this is how it looks like. So they gave you a template. So let me get rid of the grid. Right. Yeah. Project overview, your problem statements, your project goals, your user problems, possible solutions, and all that, right? So it's as simple as doing all this on Figma, then uploading it to Behance, right? So probably save this as a picture, you export it as a PNG, right? Then you upload it on Behance, arrange it sequentially, and you post it, right? It's live. Anybody from the world, from anywhere, can see your design under your name, and that acts as your portfolio, right? So also in this same place here, we also have another case study template here. Mm. So yeah, the same thing again, your problem statement, objective, your process, discover, define, idea, design, business challenges, product users, quantitative research, right? So depending on which of the design, which of the UI UX methods you used, right? Depending on the method you used, it determines what you would be showing in your case study. So that is how we create case studies as easily as that, right? So this is a UIS case. So the person just you simply take it as it is like this. Probably have to cut it up into smaller sections, right? So you can upload it to Behance without it losing its quality. But if the picture is too long, the quality would not be that good on Behance, right? So we can decide to take just what I tend to do, what I use when I'm trying to upload on Behance, something like that. I create slices, right? So slices are like kind of like you know how a slice of bread, right? So I'm just going to slice this. So I got the slice tool from here, from where the frame is at. So you have the frame tool, your section tool, and your S tool, your slice tool. So simply clicking on S on your keyboard would give you the slice tool, right? So like I've gotten one slice. So that is this, right? So if you look close, you're going to see some dashed lines. That is your slice, right? So I can try to duplicate this slice. Try to duplicate it and get another one here. So what this does for me, is going to reduce this now. So what this does for me is that if I click on this first slice, right, and I click on export and I put this to times four, because times four is best for you to enlarge the picture that you're trying to export, so that where by the time your Behance reduces the size, right, so it compresses well and it still looks good and clear, right? Because we want it to be as clear as possible. So I use that because now when you're designing on Figma, you're using vector. You're using vector. It's in SVG, right? The SVG, but once you export it as a picture, it becomes PNG or JPEG, right? It's now in pixels, so we have to ensure that the quality is the best, right? So I'm going to just create a slice of this. I'm going to export slice one, right? Once I export the slice, then I save it, right? So that's that, right? So are there any questions? Are we still confused on probably how to create our own case study, or any questions on the class so far? All right, so Vincent asks, can you elaborate more on a website being fully responsive? Right, so our last class was on responsive design. What I mean by that is that as you're designing the web version, I also want to see the mobile version beside it, right? So we can remove tablets now, right? So I just want you to create, like, once you're done creating your website, probably your landing page, I want to see the mobile responsive version beside it. That's what I meant by a website being fully responsive. So I want to see the responsive design, right? So I'm not talking about making the constraints or moving it around or making a video of all that. I just want to see the mobile design of that same website. I want to see how that website will look on my mobile phone, so make a design of both of them. That's what I meant, right? So is that clear to you, Vincent? All right. All right. So thank you. Is there any other question? Any other questions? Any other confusion? Probably regarding your task or any of or our class today, right? Do you have any other questions? Or are we clarified? Are we right? Are we ready to go? Or you do want to end the class as soon as possible so we can continue with our task? All right, so with the absence of any other questions, I guess we can call it a night, on evening rather. So good luck in your task, good luck in your capstone project, right? So any questions you have, just leave it for me on the Discord channel. Any resources you need, I'm available for you, right? So I'm any link to any slides, link to any projects, right? I dropped most of them on the slides, right? So the tools that I use, the resources I get inspiration from, there's a slide that I shared in the Discord channel, right? has links to different sites that UI UX designers frequent. So we know Behance, we know Dribble, right? We also have YouTube. So just to keep learning and getting better at it.